Hi, today we're going to be talking about Pinewood Derbies again. I love Pinewood Derby. I have raced with my boys for several years now. We've built lots of winning cars. And I have spent all kinds of money on stuff I didn't need, classes I took, things like that, because I enjoyed the science of it. You know, I've taken classes from physicists and all kinds of things that I've purchased, and I've set up for programs that were from professional racers. Just to get that little extra tip. The big thing I've learned is that the harder you work, the better off you'll be. Okay? What I mean by that is the Pinewood Derby is not won by these big items that have come in and actually done things. You know, I can't say that, okay, do this and that you'll win the race. I can tell you if you work very, very hard and spend lots of time on every single item we talk about today, you will have a very good chance of winning the race, if not almost guaranteed in a scout race. Now, the first thing we're going to be talking about here is this is the 10 points, is what it says on the thing. It's really about 11 points. 11 points that will help you build a car that is almost unbeatable, okay? And remember, what I mean by that is the more time you spend on every single one of these, the closer you get to being unbeatable. Okay? The first one is probably the one I would say would be the most important, which is weight placement. Weight placement being where the weight is in the car relationship to the balance of the car. So basically, we want the car to balance at about, the axle's right here, about 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch in front of the back wheels. Okay? If you're not working as hard on a perfection car, I'd probably get a little closer to that 1.25 inches in front of the axle. If you have done everything you can, you know you're going into a race where it's all or nothing. Bringing it back to 3/4 of an inch sometimes is very helpful. That's usually where I run, is about 3/4 of an inch. But it does take a lot of work to get a car that runs straight enough to be able to run that far back. Because what ends up happening is when the car, if it's too heavy in the rear, will basically pop a wheelie and wiggle down the track. Wiggling is bad. Anything we can do to stop any wiggle as it goes down the track is a good thing. The rougher the tracks, the more the wiggles, the more we want to try to stop that. Okay? So basically, we want all of that weight to be as far back as possible. Okay? Next thing we have here is wheelbase. Wheelbase on the car. So I've had all different kinds of cars. You can kind of see the cars I've had down here that have had all different kinds of wheelbases. I've had long wheelbases. I've had short wheelbases. Some of the races say you have to use the wheelbase that comes with the car, the actual slots that come with the car, that length. If that's the case, remember, we want our back wheels as far back as we can. If we have a preference and there's not a rule that says we can move the wheelbase around, we want the back axles as close to the back as possible. So this particular car, we base most of our cars at about 5/8 of an inch, makes it pretty safe so they don't extend past the back of the car. As you can see, this is a 5/8 and it just barely underneath. I could go a little tighter, but if I'm running blocks, tungsten blocks in the back of the car, I won't be able to get as far back. So, something to think about there. As far as from the axle wheelbase to the front, this is a 5-inch car. You can go as low as 4 3/4 and still be very, very fast. 5 inches is where you'd want to be if you're being a little more conservative. 4 3/4 if you're trying to really neck it down. Doesn't sound like a lot, but these little micro amounts is what actually makes you win. Okay, the next one, canted wheels. Okay, this means that the back wheels are going to be canted into the car so they can't hit. So they'll actually be canted in this way. We drilled our holes in the back at 3 degrees. So there's a 3-degree cant. So that axle is coming out of the back of the car on both sides at 3 degrees. This keeps the back wheels from hitting the car and helps them ride out to the edges. The front wheel, on the other hand, We have a reverse cant. It actually cants down to the front, and we do that with bending the axle. So we actually bent this axle down so that it bends at about 3 to 5 degrees. 3 degrees to be a little bit more safe, 5 degrees if you want to be a little more aggressive. And what that gives you is a car that's steerable. I can actually adjust that wheel and make the car steer, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So our next thing here is, so remember, 3 inches or 3 degrees in the back, 3 to 5 in the front of that bent axle. This wheel doesn't do anything at all unless you really have to, and then it's a matter of, if you have to run a 4-wheel car, taking this, bending this axle, and then tilting it down so it just touches as you run the car along the ground. Wheel weight. Wheel weight is probably the biggest cheat and the most important thing you worry about if it is not setting your rules. I always recommend, if you're in charge of the race, to ban lightweight wheels or purchased wheels or wheels that have been lightened beyond the standard of the wheel. About, 2.3 grams, okay, is about the lightest you can get one of these wheels to go. Usually you'll sit there and you'll be able to tell that it's been lightened by, not having any of the marks on the wheel and the wheel being really super thin, almost to the point of where you can push it in with your fingers. It's real floppy. That will kill a car no matter what it does. I mean, you could build, if you built 2 cars identical, you weight the wheels at that 1 gram, which is the best wheels you can get, you're going to beat every car you can. So if you're in a race where it is not stated whether you can do this, you have to try to lighten these wheels as much as you can and still follow the rules. Okay? That will improve your speed. When it comes to then we talk about 3-wheel riding cars. Okay, so this is we'll just kind of pop this one in. And what I mean by that is, this is your rail riding technique. This is something that all the professional racers do now. We basically take all the wheels, so the 2 backs are touching, the front wheel is not. Or this front wheel is not. And then you have a dominant front wheel that steers the car. Now we do something that most of you are going to say, that's craziness. But what we're going to do is we are actually going to tilt the car. We're actually going to drive the car into the rail. And the reason is because that wobbling is so detrimental, it's better that it actually rides the rail all the way down. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that front wheel. So we're going to bring the back wheels out so they're touching, and that front wheel we're going to turn into the rail. So normally we talk about making a car go as straight as possible, and I did that for years. I tried to sit there and I worked really, really hard to make sure it went perfectly. Now I have a board that actually has a line on it, and I turn the car 1 to 3 inches of steer over 4 feet. 1 being less aggressive, so if you haven't done a lot of work to your car and you're worried it's going to have some issues, that 1 inch is, I've won lots of races with 1 inch of steer. If you're trying to get that extra little hit of extra power, and you know the rest of your car is perfect, where you can actually sacrifice some of that, some of the steer, sorry about that, you can actually sit there and take that car and steer it into the center of the track about 3 inches over 4 feet. So that's definitely preferable. Our next one is going to be, so 3 wheels, this wheel doesn't do anything, and then aerodynamic shape. Now this is something, it does play a role. Most people say that it doesn't, but it actually does. You put a square block up here, I'll kill you every single time. The thinner you can make the block, the better. This is a car that was designed to run with weights, the circular weights. I like this because it's really easy to do. No routering, you basically have a drill. This is what I help most people build, is a car like this. I still keep the car as flat as I can, and I try to keep those weights as far back as I can. But I have the 3-hole system in the back, and then I try to hollow out the bottom of the car as best I can with a drill. That way you're not using routers and things like that, which a lot of kids just can't use. So if you're really trying to have your child do it, this is preferable. Now you can thin the car out quite a little bit by running tungsten cube weights. So the actual cubes, and you'll line them up along the back. That's why we run a 5 5/8 axle, so we can put 2 rows of tungsten cubes in the back. So something to think about. And then we hollow out the rest of the car and add weights as we need to. So aerodynamics. Get the car as small and as thin as possible. Pretty simple stuff. Nothing real big. Small and thin as possible. Next one, polished axles. Okay, this is where I've seen people go crazy. Again, this is where you can buy polished axles. And the axles in a Pinewood Derby car are basically nails. They're just simple nails. No real big deal there. Then we've got how much do we polish them to? Okay, if you are polishing for oil, you must polish every bit that you possibly can to make it work. So the more polish you can get on those wheels, the better. In other words, you just get them to a mirror. Now, the way I usually have found is that I usually polish my axles. I run graphite. I recommend you make all of your cars run graphite because it's cheap. It's really easy for most people to do. If you are running professionally, you cannot run graphite. You will lose every single time. But in the Pinewood Derby side of this, graphite is cheap. $3. Some of the best stuff money can buy, $6. And it's really easy to use. Put more on, run it a few times, put more on, run it a few times. Real super simple. So definitely, you know, that kind of an idea. But polishing axles, I polish to about 2,000 grit. Sometimes I'll go up as high as 3,000 if I know I'm in a race where I'm really going to have to be competing with people. But that takes extra time. And it's hard to get your kids to sit there and polish for 3 hours on to get all 4 wheels polished and ready to go. Axle gap. Okay, this is another one. So we take a axle gap gauge and we stick it underneath in between the wheel and the car body, and we gap that. You can do this with a business card. Works pretty well. Those thicker business cards are a little better. Anywhere from about 15 thousandths to 30 thousandths of an inch if you've got really nice ones. 30 thousandths is really safe. 15 thousandths if you're really trying to put it down on the race and be really competitive. So, you know, this is a 30 thousandths gauge. I really like this one because it tends to be pretty safe. I can always kind of go with that. If you have your wheels big and loose, what ends up happening is every single time you hit a bump, and you're going to hit bumps in the best tracks in the world, there's always still a bump, that wheel will bounce way, way out. You're not thinking of it as that big of a deal. It is. It's a huge deal. And that will cause that car to slow down as it goes down the track. So we want it to bounce out and then come right back into place. And if you've got your wheels canted, it will. It will bounce out and then it will bring it right back into place and hold those wheels out to the outside edge. But we want as little bounce as possible. And the last one is, and this is our 11th thing here, and I don't think it's as big a deal as it used to be. It used to be you had to spend time on wheels like crazy because that was super, super important. I put this on the bottom of the list because I don't think it's as important anymore. Now, if you're racing competitively, it is super important. But as you're racing for the normal person, a decent wheel that you purchase, I always recommend buying the Pinewood Derby by Revell approved wheels. They come with a decent set of axles, a decent set of wheels that are matched. I think matched wheels are more important than anything. I'm a big fan of a couple different ones. Pick the one that you like. 2s and 15s seem to be really popular. Just matters on whoever said this wheel is a little better than this wheel. But I like the idea it's a matched wheel and the axles come a little better than the ones that come in your kit. They are BSA approved wheels and they do come stock, so there's no modifications done to them. Highly recommend this over any of the other wheels out there you can purchase or that come in the kit because you never know what you're going to get. You're going to get a bunch of different ones. So when it comes to this, we are going to go, sorry about that, I lost my timer there. We are going to flatten the top as best as possible. If you'd like something like this, a little wheel lathe or a way to flatten the wheel as best you can, so that goes on there and allows the wheel to be flattened. We also on the front wheel want to smooth out this area on the side, and we want to polish the inside of the axle. So some things that kind of help with that, you can use toothpaste, you can use all kinds of things. These little Tobias swabs here that they're a pointed Q-tip. Basically, you can buy them all over the place. There's usually a small, medium, and large. These tend to be the mediums. You know, you're going to have to kind of look and see which ones fit best for your wheels. You know, that kind of an idea, and make sure that you're lubing the inside. And we're talking 5 seconds with your polish, and that's it. You know, a nice plastic polish. You could buy all kinds of products out there that come from the actual companies, which is great. You know, put it in there, swab it out, awesome. Okay, 5-6 seconds, that's all you need. Wash it out real good. The biggest problem is people leave goop in there. Wash it out real good with a pipe cleaner, and then wash it with alcohol and let it dry completely before you add your graphite. On the top, make sure it's flat, make sure it's smoothed out, make sure you don't have any hops in it. The angle is not as important as the hops. So as it comes around, we don't want the wheel bouncing up and down. We're not too worried about it because we've already got canted axles. Whether it sets on being perfectly flat or not is not as big a deal as not having the hops. So I polished the outside to about a 1,000 to 1,500 polish here, and then I polish all the different areas with that, and then I use my polish on the inside for that particular procedure. I'll tell you what I do buy all the time for my wheels. These are nail files that are 6-sided, they are 7-sided, they have all different kinds of grit. I started at the 3 grit and work my way all the way up to the 7 polish, and I'm just polishing it and getting the grooves or any marks that I made from my polish out. You know, I mean, as far as, you know, sanding wise, so I want to get rid of all those marks. So definitely, you know, make sure you're putting your weights as far back as you can. I'm a real big fan of these tungsten carbide weights. If you're using round weights, you can buy the cheaper ones here. They work great for 90% of races if you do the other items. If you're looking for that extra touch, what I really like is I can sit there and just put the smallest amount in there, and I can actually flatten it out so I get everything in there. And then I'm going to sit there and I'm going to go ahead and put my last weights in there, and that's basically all the weights I need for this car. Go ahead and put my wheel back on, gap it, and then I'm going to set it on the actual item. I'm going to balance the car until it balances. This car balances about 1 inch. And so this car balances about 1 inch. This would be fairly conservative. You could make it even a little better. Lighten up that car even more. The more you can dig out of the bottom of that car, you know, these are a couple cars we've done in the past where we've lightened them up as much as we humanly can, so the weight's in the back here, but everything else is completely hollow. Now, if you guys could see this on camera, and I held the light, you know, the car up to the light, you can actually see through this piece of wood here when it isn't painted. So definitely an advantage. This one has fenders. If you're racing competitively, put fenders on. I don't recommend it for the kids. They're fairly hard for them to make, and then you're basically making the car at that point. So the last thing is to make sure that you narrow out the car in the front for the wheel, so it actually is about a 1/16 of an inch narrower in the front here, just on the front wheel, so it rides on the front, and the rest of the car stays away from the track. So that's basically, if you follow those rules, every bit you can make a little farther. So the more you polish, the more technical you get, the more you weigh your tires, you know, get a bunch of tires together and weigh them, the better off you're going to be. Every step counts. Every little bit helps. So as always, have a great day.